Whew. Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Sister Dr. T-Matt. So the group before this beautiful circle, where'd she go? Oh, she just went out. It was about restorative justice, and I was like, wow, it was right on time to set up the chairs this way and kind of what we're going to talk about today, right? So, um, right before, while I was at my computer, some of my notes and my pictures, of course, just went kaput. So I'm working with some edits from 9 hours ago. So all of my edits aren't up to date. But you know what? We're here. We're gonna work with we gonna work with what we got. There we go. Boom. And we're gonna talk about that today too. We're gonna talk about it. All right. So I just want to acknowledge the land acknowledgement. Mwekme Alone, Native and Indigenous tribe here in Santa Clara County. And then I also want to acknowledge my great migration. My people are from Jackson, Mississippi, New Orleans, right? And so the great migration from about 1910 to 1970s, influx of African American, African centered, African ancestry, Black folks move from the South for better opportunities, get up out of Jim Crow and all of that, to the Midwestern and Western states. And so that's how I arrived here. My tribe, my wife, my beautiful wife, is here today supporting me. Thank you. I might have some friends who will also join in a moment. All Creation Preschool, my wife's business, Ujima Family Services in San Jose, African American Community Service Agency in San Jose, Homeless Kid World Traveler, a friend of mine, and also to all those we mourn and give thanks to, especially as we discuss topics around suicide. I didn't tell you guys my topic. We're going to be talking about today, let's get home safe, okay? In my culture, we text each other. When we leave in the club, text me when you get home, okay? So today we're going to talk about getting home safely, cultural considerations for maladaptive seeking, substance misuse, and suicide prevention amongst Black masculine populations. I'm not saying Black males, because all of this, I don't understand femininity. I love it, but I am just masculine to my core. That's who I'm in. But I am all women, right? So we're going to talk about all of what masculine, sort of these, there's Stacy, masculinity kind of, okay? It's going to get hot in here. I'm not going to hold back. I just want to acknowledge that I'm going to talk my talk. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to speak my slang. I can only come to you as authentic as possible. If I stuff shit, I'm going to use some profanity. I'm going to pay for it later, and then she going to say, you were stuffing stuff. she told me last night, don't start none, won't be none. I am going to use the use of the N-word. I'm going to listen to some music that has that word. Also going to look at some research that has that word. So while you're here, keep an open mind, right? Hopefully this time together is just going to allow you to just feel something, right? Keep forgetting I have this clicker. Today, we are going to learn, we're going to discuss the neuropsychology of survival and seeking within the cultural framework of intersectional trauma and grief. I have to be fancy. I didn't spend $17,000 million to not be able to say words like neuropsychology. So my mentors and advisors talk about psychology. You have this degree. Talk about it, right? And then we are also going to discuss masculine help-seeking behaviors within the context of substance use and misuse. And lastly, I'm going to sort of invite curiosity around some research that I did as a cultural consideration for specific interventions to address grief, seeking habits, substance misuse, and suicidal ideation amongst persons that identify as African ancestry, Black, and masculine. Any questions so far? All right. Intersectional trauma. So, when I was looking at intersectionality, Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term back in the 90s. It's a metaphor that Black woman at the time she was looking at in the legal system was getting stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Over the last couple of years, intersectionality has evolved into a cultural kind of construct around a place where privilege and oppression sort of intermesh, they collide, okay? So when I kind of did some diving about intersectionality, what I found was that, oh, intersectionality is just another word for trauma. Can you imagine? Well, we all probably know. You know what it feels like to be stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? You know what that is to sort of have this experience of feeling stuck, right? And the more I looked into it, what makes it a trauma is the psychological effects of discrimination against marginalized groups results in an insidious trauma. We know by the research that Black and LGBTQIA plus individuals are getting stuck in these places, right, where the complexity of trauma continues to add up, okay? Because of that, it has neurobiological consequences equivalent to an overwhelmed nervous system, okay? The nervous system, when you are in the fetus, is the first thing that is created. When your nervous system is bad, everything is bad, okay? Dr. Tamara Bryant Davis in 2019 says that this nature of trauma is occurring daily. She is now the president of the American Psychological Association. She says that this trauma is occurring daily as a direct relation to the intersections that happen to these marginalized groups. Daily. I am so happy that the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Agency looked at trauma again. So this is updated, which I love. This is now their diagram for trauma. What do you guys see?
A person who's not whole.
Okay. Tell me more.
Focuses on the individual rather than where they came from their family. Individuals that before therapy would focus on the family and what happened to your family rather than the
Gotcha.
individual themselves.
Gotcha. Yeah, they're capturing that more. You're right about that. Individual.
Actually, I was talking about the photo, an individual who is there's a person, but they're not a whole person.
Yes, right. Individual, this sort of complexity of layers, right? And so I like how you did capture the individual, because the individual in some way is influencing or either being influenced by all of those other different layers. Okay? And in this sense, it does make it intersectional. It's happening all at once. I love that movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. That's what this is. Good job, Samsa. You did a good job in 2023. Oh. So, what Dr. Tamar Bryan is saying, right, is that these traumatic events to marginalized groups, because it's occurring daily, we're not just looking at the individual. We're looking at the individual's family, the individual's in group, their community, and also the mass trauma, such as like COVID, right, or natural disasters that are also happening, okay? So to kind of highlight that a little bit more, I have a video, if it's going to show for me. Is it going to be nice? Yes? No? Maybe so. Oh, see, I don't see it on here. Thank you. There we go. Did you do it? Spacebar? No. It doesn't want to work today. Hey, it's okay. You said that you will. I can do the videos. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the neurobiology of trauma. So that video was just again an introduction to, as we are bringing space into what's happening to African ancestry, right? Black individuals. That video was a snapshot of, again, trauma, right? From enslavement of African-centered people. So let's talk about the neurobiology of trauma. Not everyone who endures a traumatic event will develop PTSD or have a traumatic experience. Okay? What I'm speaking to are these, again, complex traumas, these things that on a daily basis, there's some reminder of the trauma, right? That's stuck between a rock and a hard place. So, first thing to go is the prefrontal cortex. That is going to impair your executive functioning. If your executive functioning is impaired, that's going to limit your response ability. Okay? Next thing to go is your sensibility. That is the thalamus. That is a part of the brain that processes sensory information, right? Eyes, ears, nose, sight, smell, right? So your sensibility is gone. The next thing to go is the hippocampus. Hippocampus is responsible for the part of the brain that stores memory and learning. Trauma excites irritability. It gets that, they call it lizard brain. It gets that limbic system, that amygdala activated, right? Trauma interferes with reliability. It's going to have an impact on the endocrine system, right? The way you kind of present in the world, how balanced you feel, your temperature, right? And it increases your vulnerability by releasing cortisol. I like to think of cortisol as the airbag that deploys in a car, right? It protects you from impact, but you will not drive around with your airbag deployed every day you go to work, right? Now it's in the way. Now it's just busy, right? And trauma, because of these reasons, are going to diminish your capabilities. So you're not quite yourself, potentially stuck in dissociated states. Okay? This ongoing complex trauma is going to increase the likelihood of behaving in survivor mode 24/7. That was only 30 seconds. I'm tired. Survivor mode is running in circles, feeling trapped, feeling stuck, right? Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, 2014, says an organism stuck in survivor mode operates in locations that leave no room for nurture, care, love. That the human capacity to imagine, plan, play, learn, pay attention is threatened and or diminished. Repetitive survival only intensifies pain and self-hatred. McKittrick in 2011, this was before the George Floyd incident in 2020. And I believe even a little bit before Trayvon Martin and the whole Black Lives Matter movement. So 2011, McKittrick was on to something. Before there was a Black Lives Matter, she would say, Black lives don't matter. A world that is rejecting Black humanity. Ontologically, this places Black people in geographic locations of deprivation. Wynter in 2002, again, before 2011, said, we out here like homeless niggas without comprehensible claims to space. This experience over time, okay? This experience, you all are just learning about this within the last 10, 15 minutes, right? Over time, this has been an experience for Black humanity. This can turn into a need of unrealistic expectations, resulting in a defensive desire to seek out people, places, and things, right, that exacerbate the likelihood of addictions. It teaches a person how to suffer less by potentially turning their backs on the things that need to be attended to, right? So this early accumulation of survivor mode turns into these needs for lust, turns into these needs for desire and cravings and pleasures, right? Because again, we're stuck, trying to find our way. Where do we go? Who's gonna let us in, right? This is a double-edged sword when now you start to think about masculinity and the construct of masculinity. Socially, there's been tons of research for the ages that discuss how masculinity oftentimes correlates with adverse mental health outcomes and detrimental health-related behaviors. Okay? So now you're embodying this masculine I gotta do everything. I don't need nobody's help. I'm stuck. I'm gonna find my way out. Nah, I'm good, bruh. Right? Now it gets more perplexed. Right? Masculinity also is a predictor of negative mental health related outcomes, including substance abuse and symptoms of stress and depression. Those that tend to ignore these symptoms, avoid asking for help, engage in high risk behaviors, die sooner, and have higher depressive suicide rates. Let's look at some numbers. 334 million Americans, give or take, within the last 1 or 2 years. 43 million of these Americans are African ancestry and Black. 210,000 combined substance and suicide deaths in America in 2021. Out of those 210,000, 152,000 were male. Okay, that's about 75 or so percent. Okay, that's right. So we know masculinity, right? And then out of that 210,000, 28,000 were African ancestry, Black in 2021. Now, when you look at this number scientifically, it's just saying that one out of maybe, well, I should say six out of 1,000 or so Black males, but I'm also going to say masculine presenting. Okay, 6 out of 1,000 Black masculine persons die by suicide every day. That's if you look at these numbers scientifically. What was the first rule? Maybe the fourth or fifth. Have an open mind here. It's not what you think, it's what you feel. Conceptually, we live in Santa Clara County. 2 million or so people, 1.8 million people in Santa Clara County. 3% of Santa Clara County are Black. That's only 60,000 people in Santa Clara County that are Black. That means if we look at this number conceptually and we put that 28,000 right here in Santa Clara County, 1 out of 2, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 8 Black masculine presenting folks are struggling, are thinking about suicide, are stuck. We are united in grief. This trauma that shrouds Black persons, ultimately unresolvable conflict. Ultimately, this unresolvable conflict, these struggles are only ended by death and stuck in a survival state that is carried into the next generation. And this is 1972. This was 30 years before 2011. 2005, we finally understand a little bit more about DNA. Our eyes, our ears, our hair, our skin color, right? That's only 2% of who we are. The other 98% is the trauma that we carry from generation to generation, to generation to generation to generation to generation. So the truth about trauma is that the words, images, and impulses remain after a traumatic event resurface to form this unsurreptitious language of our pain that we hold on to. Let's see if this is gonna work. Yes, thank you. It's not working. But this song is called United in Grief by Kendrick Lamar, his latest album that came out last summer. And in this song, he's talking a little bit about what the research has been saying for all of these years. And so he says, a part of the song, he says, are the psychologists listening? And so I'm telling Kendrick today, I'm listening, Kendrick. This is how I'm listening. So I recently visited the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. Just saying it, just looking at that picture. That's Black Disneyland right now for me. That was everything. But I attended this museum this past summer. I wrote this research in 2021. I have this picture here because as soon as I entered that building, my research was valid. I won't tell you everything about what you're going to see and feel when you enter this building. But what I would say is you got to start from the bottom. You got to get down in the trenches. You got to go down. So that's where I start with my process. So what I did in my research in 2021, I was looking at, again, intersectionality, but I wasn't looking at intersectionality in a frame of decolonization and white supremacy. That just didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel right to me because I'm like, every time I say that word white supremacy, I'm saying that there is another person more supreme than me, and I can't, that just doesn't ring in my spirit, right? Every time I hear decolonize, we will never decolonize. We won't. We won't. And even when I entered this museum, the first thing it says too, when you go down deep, it says there was a time and place where everybody got along. We were all, there was no such thing as race. There wasn't. Did something happen? And not just white folks selling black folks into slavery, but our own people was selling us into slavery. So I had to look at this. So intersectional trauma theory is a conceptual leap. A conceptual leap is research done by Clegg and Langley out in like 2014. And it's a way of seeing and articulating sort of this nuance of what's happening in space, in time, in connection. Because if we are human beings, we should feel, we should experience one another, right? We should dap, right? Because you know, I saw you as Flash, you're going to have a good time, right? So, I wanted to know more about how to do that. And guess what? It happens. But first, there's a process. The process is a posture of being far from home. You're stuck, okay? You are far from home. We're looking at and exploring, are you paying attention or are you paying addiction? We know that the trauma is already going to throw your orientation off, your responses off, your senses off. So I'm not going to expect you to come on, let's do these coping skills right now. No. Because look at all the stuff we got to process. You ready? Y'all ain't ready. plus years of oppression. Mess with. Oppression is a trap. I think there's a game now called the disparity trap. I want to check it out. But it is a trap. Traps have been set since the beginning of time. If you look at whatever your faith practice is, there's a story that starts it all off like, you know what? We got caught up, y'all. We got caught up. And we've been trying to find our way back home since. Right? Every faith says that. We've been caught up. We was out there doing something we were supposed to do. Now we got to get back home, get back to paradise. So traps have been set since the beginning of time. Human trafficking, enslavement. I don't even call it slavery anymore. I'm calling it what it is. We were kidnapped. We were human trafficked. We were taken, removed from homes and put in places. People, man, it's crazy. I gotta be up close. Civil War, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, KKK. Oh, there it is. Policing. You know, policing came out of KKK, right? There wasn't even a thing called call the police, right? Till the KKK, right? Civil rights, the Black Power movement. So the thing with civil rights and the Black Power, yes, there's freedom and knowing that we have some really great Black leaders. Guess what, y'all? They killed them. Affirmative action. They give us some, they take it away. Crack cocaine epidemic. Public Enemy, niggas with attitude. Hip hop started getting harder in the 80s. I was like, okay. All right. Police brutality in the 90s. The flood of Katrina. George Bush don't like black people. Right? Black Lives Matter. What's not in here also is the welfare system, the Mohanian papers, right? Other things that kept it real noisy for our people. So all of that is being carried. I'm not just carrying the weight of the 80s because I was born in the 80s, but I'm carrying the weight of the 70s and the 60s because my parents, they couldn't show up for me because they were getting caught up in all of that stuff, right? My parents was feeling some neglect because, again, their parents had to rush out of the South to avoid being hanged, lynched, brutalized. And guess what, y'all? We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. We learn it a little bit. We say some things, right? But this is a process. So once we, wait, let me go back. So because this is a process, what we want to do as folks who really want to do the work, right? Who really want to restore some things, right? We got to be willing to sit in it. We got to be willing to be honest, right? We got to be willing to sort of say, your behavior is off the chart. I'm going to send you to the principal, right? You're doing too much, right? We got to be able to say, man, seems like you're having a hard day. Want to talk about it? No, I don't want to talk about it. Is there somebody that you would like to talk to about? I said I don't want to talk about it, right? You got to be willing to even take those hits because it's going to take time. Let me give you some coping skills. I don't want no coping skills, right? But trust the process. Trust that while you're in it, and I know this works, right? I know this works because I wouldn't be a doctor right now. Somebody had to just hold space for me and see all of that stuff. Because I was hitting, swinging, right? Power. So once you are able to find a place to process, get to a place of processing, this looks so differently. I'm just doing a little snapshot of it because I'm in a for time purposes. But in a state of process, right? When you're able to even manage your own emotional reactions, find some your own sort of, you know, self-care, deep breathing, right? The process does get better, right? Ice Cube said, check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? So sometimes we gotta go in there like checking up, right? That person is far from home. They don't even know whether or not there is even a home, right? But in the process, that something happens. Start talking, starting to get to know them, interests, hobbies, desires, right? Power is helping a person begin to search for home. The problem is that it's hard to get back home when all we do is get beat on. This image to my right is of Whipping Peter. Apple just did a movie with Will Smith called Emancipation about the Whipping Peter um, story, and that man was trying to get home. Okay. This is going to be a place where the depressions and the anxieties are going to come up. You might just see again the surface of resistance, of the fear, right? I just want to do it kind of my way. Don't help. I don't want any help. But when things start opening up, you begin to align and feel a sense of we're connected, right? In psychotherapy, it's called like creating a gestalt, right? Creating a moment where we're just sitting, we're just being, seeing, we're here, right? But understand that these depressive and anxiety symptoms are going to show up. So start listening for cues. Talks about chronic pain or digestive issues, loss of focus, trouble at home, substance abuse, right? And then this video that's probably not going to work is Conway and the Machine. And Conway the Machine, he's a hip hop artist, and this song is called Stress. And the video is this gangster dude having a therapy session. And I love it. I love it. I wish we could see it, but you know, internet. Going back because again, like I said, I lost my notes in the other slide. So process. So process is deliberate. So these tensions I formed this research on is deliberateness, serendipity, okay? Engagement, detachment, knowing, not knowing, and self-expression and community connection. Okay? So process is deliberate. If that student is coming at you with some wild, it's deliberate. I think you can help me, but I don't know if you will help me because another person that looked like you didn't help me. But you said something really cool today that made me open up. But if you let me down one more time, I swear I'm gonna burn this whole place down. Are you going to help me or not? So it's deliberate. That energy is going to come at you. Okay? Or even if you're feeling some anxiety within yourself, that's deliberate. That's an indicator to check your bias. That's an indicator to be like, oh, wait, they didn't teach me this in school. This is going to rely on something else, right? Deliberate. So power in this search for home is a hopeful versus hopeless space. But what it's really saying is, do we align or do we continue to go our separate ways? Is there going to be some engagement here, or do I continue to detach? And then not just engagement with you, but just engagement in the body. So this is where you could probably do some, mindfulness work, some deep breathing work. But if we're gonna work together, right? We're gonna have to learn how to take some deep breaths, right? If we're gonna work together, we're gonna have to learn how to get back into our bodies, right? Because there has to be some engagement within even the self, right? This is now purpose. Purpose is knowing or not knowing. This is where you start to think, am I being careful or careless as a provider, as a clinician? If you are not utilizing American Society of Addiction Medicine criteria and the DSM-5 to diagnose for substance abuse disorders, being careless. I've been there because guess what? They don't even train you on substance abuse until you actually are in a substance abuse program. So if you're in a mental health setting, right, and you're getting individual clients, and your individual client is telling you, oh yeah, I'm smoking weed all day, drinking, right? And you're not trained on substance abuse. You're not trained to diagnose that. So you diagnose anxiety or depression. That's careless. Because we know that substance abuse has to be addressed first before the depression or the anxiety, because the substance abuse is going to exacerbate the depression, the anxiety, the trauma. Oh yeah, I'm drinking every night. My job keep fucking with me. What do you mean I can't smoke weed? Right? Weed is in my house all the time. Drinking, partying, right? And so even the American Society for Addiction Medicine, they look at other kind of layers of the person misusing substances. So shouldn't be seeing patients if they're under the influence. And they're telling you, oh yeah, I just got fucked up last night. Oh, wait a minute. Right? Let's slow down. Let me get you some help. Right? We should really consider if there are any acute intoxications, right? Because even if they're coming at you all gibberish, yada yada yada, right? They could be having a substance-induced psychotic episode, right? Methamphetamines will keep you up all night, right? I'm ready to do some work. No, you're not. You may need to get you a little bit more help, right? And so you also want to look at the environment. You want to look at the readiness to change. Substance misuse treatment is a tricky one, because guess what? I can't force you to stop using drugs. I can sort of assess where you're at, and then sort of, again, your readiness to change, you're not quite there yet. You don't even know you have a problem, right? Pre-contemplation. Okay. You think you have a problem, you just don't know what to do with it yet. We can work with that. All right. Right? And so you will, even as the clinician, you want to help the client move through these readiness stages of change so they can get to that maintenance. But we also know addiction is a chronic relapsing disorder. So you also have to know how to provide education around relapse prevention, right? And so when you're careful, so when you are helping people get back to helping the population, helping our brothers, helping again, you know, our folks, just kind of process, help them kind of get back to the senses, do some mindfulness, teach some connection, right? Like really align with them. Do some careful inventory and assessment about a substance misuse disorder, because if you're not doing that, again, it's you're gonna be you're both gonna be there stuck. Okay. Now, when things are starting to open up, you move into this again, this space of connection and self-expression. And that's a beautiful place, right? And you all seen it. You've done the work, so you know when, you know, your clients are feeling better, your students are feeling better. They're like, guess what? Guess what I did, right? They wanted to, even adults. Man, guess what? I'm 2 weeks clean. I'm 2 weeks clean, Dr. Matt. Yes, yes, right? You can celebrate with them. And they feel it. Guess what? That's instant dopamine. They don't need a substance to give them that instant boost, right? And then they remember that. A core memory is formed, right? Wait, I don't have to keep holding on to all of that pain. There's spaces where I can be free, where I can let that go, right? One thing about Black people, we resilient. We bounce back. So you want to tap into that resilient capability, right? All hip hop artists, check in with your folks, see what they listening to, because there's always that one song that's like, you know, the swag song, right? We say it in our music, in our movies, in our books, in our culture. We talk about shake those hands like, woo, right? We know, but do y'all know that we know how to get through? Because if you're only looking at us like, oh, you're a problem, then that's all you're going to see is a problem. But you can tap in to the universal awareness that we all want to experience freedom. It's a human right. Black joy, tap into other community partners, check in to see if your folks are practicing any psychospiritual practices or techniques, right? If they're going to church, you can ask those questions. Are you in the faith? You know, and even if it's, you know, no faith, right? Well, what kind of belief system do you have? What keeps you going and motivated, right? So that psychospiritual awareness of there's still something keeping you alive, right? What is that? The big one, consciousness. Consciousness is consciousness is this deep seated experience that whatever is coming at me, I am prepared, I am capable, I won't get caught up. consciousness is this experience where a person is moving in a state of liberation. So when the whole stay woke movement came out, some folks were like, what do they mean by stay woke? That's what they mean. To be conscious that whatever is coming at me, I got this. I trust that I have everything that I need. Even when I'm still working on tools, even when I'm still working on my recovery, my sobriety, right? Managing my depression and my anxiety, even in the midst of all of that, I am conscious and aware that it's gonna be all right. Kendrick Lamar, To Pimp a Black Butterfly, 2015. And of course, Wakanda Forever. Because guess what? Black people will be in the future. And we are going to be dope. So, here are some resources for you all when you are working with this population or this group. Just a few, because if I would have typed them all, I would have been doing too much. Of course, the suicide hotline, 988-741-741. But don't immediately go there, right? Like, see, you all know how to do safety plans and, check in. Who's your people? Can we get, somebody on the line that can have your back? Who else do we need to get in on this, right? We don't always need to go straight there. Kind of consider, some protective factors, right? Consider, who's their group, right? My sister, and she's fine with me telling this story because I told it. Yeah, she had to be put on 5150. And I immediately said, why nobody call me? Right? So I had to drive out there, and she's crying. She's traumatized, right? And I'm thinking, and I've done suicide prevention, right? I'm telling folks, why nobody call me? Oh, well, right? So please make sure you're checking to see who their people are, because their people are worried about it. Okay? Now, if it happens that right now their connection's a little off, right, and you really want to talk through, okay, here's what the procedure is, yes, but first check in to see if there's others, within their circle. Therapy for Black men. The Black Men Heal, kind of, I think it's like a grant where Black men can get free 8 free sessions of therapy. The Shop Interrupted, that's a show on HBO Max where Black masculine persons sit around and talk about some really deep-rooted, conversations that, again, go on within the Black masculine population. The National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network. American Psychological Association, under the presidency of Dr. Tamar Bryant, has shifted things within this past year. So they have tons of information on intergenerational trauma that you can check out. Please check that out. Statewide, the Black Emotional Mental Health Collective, I believe they're out of LA. And then locally, you have Ujima Family Services here in San Jose, and African American Community Services Agency in San Jose as well. And then here are some resources for practitioners. If you want to sort of, again, align with some of the clinical leaders, you have Dr. Tamar Bryant, Dr. Joy DeGrew, Dr. Jaya John, Dr. Earl These are psychologists in the field right now who's opened these open the space to have these tough conversations. And then other guides that you can read over. The first one is again about Black mental health, intergenerational trauma. An article came out of Forbes, and then the National Institute of Health article about intergenerational trauma. So as I wrap up, in the spirit of call and response, I'm going to say something, you say something. Here we go. I am not the trauma that I keep.
I am not the trauma that I keep.
You are not the trauma that you keep.
You are not the trauma that you keep.
We are not the trauma that we keep.
We are not the trauma that we keep.
One more time. I am not the trauma that I keep.
I am not the trauma that I keep.
You are not the trauma that you keep.
You are not the trauma that you keep.
We are not the trauma that we keep.
We are not the trauma that we keep.
About me, I done been through some things. I take an ethnographic approach. We know ethnography in the social science to be a study of being kind of the fly on the wall, where you're in the room and you're observing patterns, behaviors that's going on. The autoethnography approach is not just being in the room like a fly on the wall, but actually saying, hey, I see it just like y'all see it. I'm experiencing it just like y'all experience it, right? So I done been through some things. This for me is a full circle moment because I have worked Gilroy to Palo Alto, Palo Alto to Gilroy, Gilroy to Palo Alto, Palo Alto. Y'all know that route, okay? And so this is my first time speaking to Santa Clara County Behavioral Health in this way. It's an honor to be here. Got another song, but y'all probably not going to hear it, but I will have it for you. Thank you, Ashe. Any questions?